In a distant land called Miram, a boy and a girl were lying beside a rock under the fading sky. The boy grew quiet, lost in thought, then began to speak of the past. He told the girl that once there had been a sport called running. The girl tilted her head, confused. She asked what he was talking about, clearly unfamiliar with the term. The boy smiled faintly and admitted that he had never been a good runner. No matter how much he trained, he remained slow. The girl listened and said she understood, but the boy shook his head. He insisted she didn't truly grasp just how slow he had been. He recalled how, as a child, he was always the last to arrive, always the one trailing behind. He had been teased constantly for it. His so-called friends would pretend to wait, then laugh and run ahead, leaving him behind. The girl commented that it didn't sound like he had any real friends. Suddenly, the boy's expression darkened. He heard something nearby and quickly told her to stay quiet. But even as danger loomed, his mind returned to those days. He had chased after those bullies anyway. They had mocked him, certain he would never catch up. The girl remarked that, well, it was true he was slow. But the boy surprised her. He said that despite everything, he did catch them. And he kicked every one of them. The girl's eyes widened. She asked how he had managed to do that. He replied simply that he didn't give up. Even when he thought his heart might burst, even when his lungs felt like they were choking on blood, he had kept going. That determination, he said, was still inside him. He would go all the way this time too. The girl, weak and wounded, tried to smile. She whispered that whoever said that, he was a very mature person. The boy looked at her solemnly. He said he refused to fall so easily into the hands of assassins. He would not surrender until the very end. The girl, hearing this, looked at him with soft eyes and admitted that although he was weak, she was glad to hear his resolve. He responded firmly. Even if he were captured, he would run away again. He swore to her that he would take care of his health, that he would take the medicine she recommended, and that he would live to be 100 years old. As silence fell between them, the boy looked at her and, after a long pause, whispered that she should rest in peace. But just then, voices echoed in the distance. Enemies were shouting, ordering a search. One of them mentioned blood clearly. They were close. The boy clenched his fists and covered the girl's body protectively. He promised her that he would return and give her a proper funeral. But the enemies grew louder. One shouted that only a fool would overlook the blood trail it would lead them straight to the fugitives. His eye narrowed with grim determination. He remembered the promise he had made not in this life, but in another. In his previous life, he had battled cancer. The fight had been long and agonizing. At the very end, he had expected rest. But instead, he was reborn this time into the Muam family, a powerful lineage with a storied history. 14 years ago, he had the fortune of being taken into the Baek Clan, a warrior family founded by the legendary martial artist known as the S-Blade of Immortality. But even in this new life, peace eluded him. His new body suffered from blocked Qi channels, a critical condition for a warrior of the main clan. Disgraced and weakened, he chose to leave his family in his 20s and wandered into isolation, waiting for death. In that lonely place, he met a companion code W. Life began to feel peaceful again. For a moment, he even thought he might be content. But death came knocking once more. He tried to flee from the assassins but found himself at a dead end. The only object nearby was a rusty sword, too dull even to chop vegetables. Still, it was better than nothing. As he grabbed the sword, he felt its surprising weight. Suddenly, a voice behind him declared that he had been caught. The voice mocked him, saying it wasn't proper for a noble son to run away like a rat. The boy turned, raised the sword, and said it wasn't fitting for a lowly worm to speak so arrogantly. The enemy, amused, warned him not to point a blade at a clan member unless he was prepared to die. He said that if the boy named himself and begged for mercy, he might spare him. Terrified, the boy prayed silently, hoping the man wouldn't remove his mask, but the masked figure only laughed. He called the boy a coward but one with spirit. He revealed his name, Chak Per. The boy asked if Per had come for his soul. Per smirked and replied that he was a quick thinker and that he would deliver the boy's head to his master as a trophy. But the boy stood his ground. With newfound resolve, he swore that his blade would sever Per's vile tongue. Per raised an eyebrow and commented that the boy was braver than the rumors claimed. He decided to allow the boy the first move. Doubt crept into the boy's mind. Could he even resist a real cultivator like Per? His techniques were mere child's play. But then, from nowhere, a spirit appeared beside him. An old man stern and weathered looked down at him and criticized his sword stance. The boy was startled and frightened. He stammered, asking if he was seeing a ghost. Per, noticing the boy's strange behavior, asked what was wrong with him. The boy replied that Grandpa had suddenly appeared out of thin air. The spirit scoffed and told him to mind his manners. Per, puzzled, remarked that the boy must have lost his mind from fear. But as the boy thought it through, it began to make sense. No one else could see the spirit. It must be the ghost of one of his ancestors. And that revelation changed everything. In a distant land, the boy contemplated the existence of the afterlife. He told himself that soon, he and COA would be reunited, just the two of them. But then he raised his voice, declaring that wasn't the point. He had overestimated himself, and it was time to finish things. Looking at PE, the boy noticed something surprising. He was stronger than he appeared at first glance. Nevertheless, he knew he would have to fight to the very end if he wished to face Seiho with honor. A spirit suddenly spoke, questioning the boy's lack of training. His stance, the spirit said, left much to be desired. The boy explained that his chi channels had been blocked, making it impossible to cultivate or fight properly. The spirit, seemingly unimpressed, remarked that the boy was speaking without proper respect. Still, he admitted their meeting might have been fated. Then, the spirit offered to lend him the sacred blade of immortality. He introduced himself as Baek Jongsung-chan and told the boy that he would borrow his body for a while. The boy barely had time to react. The spirit possessed him instantly. Overcome by fury, the boy cried out for it all to end. He charged forward in a blind attack, but something shifted. In that very moment, everything changed. The boy found himself able to resist PE's assault, repelling it. He shouted that no assassin should dare raise a blade against a fighter from the Baek Clan. PE, startled, asked how he had managed such a feat, but he didn't linger on the thought and resumed his attack. Anger burned within the boy. He shouted that they would pay with their lives for what they had done. Then, something unfamiliar surged through him, the seventh form of the blade of heaven and earth. It felt as if his body moved on its own. Only 6 forms of that blade style were known. The last 3 had been thought lost to time. Yet, Chan instructed the spirit to repent and then perform the mysterious 7th form. Behind it came another legendary move, the one-handed splitting moon. The boy watched in awe. He realized that this ghostess Chan was indeed the true wielder of the sacred blade of immortality. Chan asked him if he had seen it. Lying on the ground, exhausted, the boy asked what exactly he was supposed to have seen. Chan explained it was the blade of heaven and earth. The boy replied that yes, he had seen it all, and added that W might still be alive had he known how to wield such power before. Chan responded softly. He said that was fine. It had been a final act of kindness for his dying descendant. The boy then asked whether Chan was dead. Chan confirmed it. There was nothing to be done. His body had been pushed beyond its limits. Not even the most miraculous medicine such as the purest milk of heaven and earth or the 1,000-year-old snow ginseng could have saved him. The boy's eyes widened as he recalled something and asked what would have happened if Chan had taken that medicine a year ago. Chan paused, surprised, and admitted that he wasn't sure. At that moment, the boy's vision began to dim. Slowly, everything faded until his eyes closed. Meanwhile, in the Baek Clan's medical room, the doctor was shouting in amazement. This, he said, was the ultimate miracle. The boy now identified as Baek Yigang asked weakly if this meant his brother would live. The doctor confirmed it, stating that he was already looking much better. Gang's younger brother, Ha, explained that they had shopped around at different pharmacies in hopes of curing the meridian blockage. The doctor mentioned powerful remedies like Snow Jinang and Shaolin medicine. However, he admitted to himself that it would have been foolish for anyone to waste such valuable resources on someone who had been considered a lost cause. Just then, Gang began to cough and stir. The doctor smiled and said it looked like the boy was about to wake up. Turning to Ha, he asked if he would stay and wait for the young master to awaken. Ha shook his head and told the doctor to pass on a message instead. When Gang recovered, he should stop by the Red Dragon Hall. The patriarch of the family had something to ask him. The doctor warned that the young master would still need rest, but Ha had already left, closing the doors behind him. He knew the truth. If Gang had died, their family situation might have improved. Yet even now, he couldn't help but act coldly. Gang suddenly awoke, calling out W's name in anguish. The doctor tried to calm him, warning him not to move so soon. Gang asked where CO was. The doctor hesitated, then told him that if he was referring to that maid, her funeral had already taken place. It had been 2 weeks. Gang nodded and said that he understood everything now. He then asked where his sword had gone. The doctor replied that he had removed it from Gang's hands and handed it over to the patriarch. Gang asked if the patriarch was waiting for him and said that he would go to him no matter what. Concerned, the doctor reminded him of the pain he must be feeling. But Gang, comparing it to the seizures caused by blocked meridians and the pain of spiritual damage, replied that this was nothing. He was used to it by now. He thanked the doctor for saving his life. The doctor replied modestly that he was only doing his duty. Still, in his heart, he thought back to the rumors that Gang was a lazy fool, a weakling. Now he knew those rumors were lies. Despite the pain, Gang made his way to the patriarch's residence. The guards announced his arrival. Inside, the patriarch told them to let him in. Gang took a deep breath and tried to conceal his nervousness. Just as he stepped forward, the spirit Chan appeared before his eyes. "You're awake," Chan said with a warm smile. "I'm truly happy." Gon was startled when he saw the spirit of Chan again. Confused, he asked what Chan was doing there. 200 years ago, during the decline of the Sacred Blade Immortals era, the Baek Clan had teetered on the brink of extinction. The number of Baeks had dwindled steadily until Patriarch Baek Arbin rose with his unmatched martial prowess. His ruthlessness had earned him the nickname Ironblood from the revered masters. Gon had never imagined such a man would be his own patriarch. The patriarch turned to Gon and asked if there was something on his face, noticing the boy's startled look. Nearby, Chan asked sarcastically why everyone looked so grim despite the clan's recent success. He even reached out to tug the patriarch's beard, teasing that it was too thick. Gon froze in fear, half expecting Chan to pull it off. Ignoring the antics, the patriarch turned back to Gan. The young man quickly knelt and apologized, admitting that his body was not yet fully healed. The patriarch confirmed his identity and then asked Gan if he had any idea who was behind the recent assassination attempt. Gan hesitated but realized this was a test. He ventured a guess. Perhaps the Demonic Alliance. They were growing increasingly bold and influential. However, he reconsidered, saying that the assassin's techniques didn't match. Even the Demonic Alliance, as reckless as they could be, would never dare to strike down a member of the Baek Clan, especially someone who wasn't even the heir. The patriarch noted that Gon had changed, but didn't yet have a conclusive opinion. He mentioned that no one but Gon had survived the attack. Did he feel guilty? Gan took a moment to reflect and then said that he was grateful to be alive. He had to survive to avenge those who had fallen. The patriarch stared at him, then told Gon to approach. Surprised, Gon asked for confirmation, and the patriarch nodded. As Gon came closer, the patriarch looked into his eyes and asked how he had managed to defeat the assassins. He noted that the bodies bore the distinct marks of the Heaven and Earth Blade technique. Gon was unsure how to respond. He couldn't very well say that the spirit of the Sacred Blade Immortal had possessed his body and fought in his stead. That would raise too many questions. Instead, he decided to blend truth with legend. He said that at the end of a secret passage, he discovered a strange space marked with a glowing streak. As soon as he stepped into it, something awakened inside him. His body moved on its own as he fought the assassins. Then, everything went black. The patriarch furrowed his brow. "What a strange phenomenon," he muttered, then suddenly reached out and grabbed Gan's hands, channeling his energy to examine the boy. Startled, the other clan members urged the patriarch to remain calm. He ignored them and continued the inspection. After a while, he concluded that Gan's illness hadn't receded. There was no noticeable increase in his internal energy either. Still, he said, Gan was free to leave. Gan didn't want to walk away empty-handed. He asked for his sword to be returned. The patriarch scoffed, holding up the weapon. "This rusty piece of iron? You enjoy playing the warrior, do you?" With a flick of his power, he floated the sword through the air and handed it to Gon. Chan chimed in, mockingly asking if people were blind to beauty. Could they not recognize the legendary sword? Gon said the craftsmanship wasn't as crude as it looked and asked if the sword was truly that large. Chan confirmed it was forged from meteorite steel. This was his favorite blade, and its name was Meteor. Gon recalled that it had been kept in the Elder's courtyard. Chan said that was probably a fake, though he couldn't understand why anyone would bother to replace it. Then he grew somber, commenting on how cold the patriarch was, like a serpent. How could a father hate his own son so deeply? Gon disagreed. He said he didn't believe the patriarch hated him. After all, hadn't he been the one to obtain the 1,000-year-old snow Jinang for him? He recounted how he had overheard a conversation between the patriarch and the doctor. The doctor had warned that the medicine was too rare and precious, meant only for the patriarch himself. But the patriarch had insisted Gon take it, ordering the doctor to remain silent. That single act had lifted a great weight from Gon's shoulders. Chan asked what kind of treatment the patriarch had arranged. Was it for internal injury recovery? Gon nodded hesitantly, admitting that his father likely wasn't good at showing affection, but that didn't mean he didn't care. Elsewhere, a servant reported to the patriarch that he had administered internal energy massage therapy without alerting the elders. It must have been difficult, the servant said. The patriarch replied that Noit was far more difficult for Gan now. His body, after everything, was in a terrible state.
He had only been able to recover thanks to the efforts of the healer. The servant told him he should feel honored. Afterward, the patriarch approached the clan manager and remarked that he had been too harsh in the past. It had been a long time since they had last seen each other. The manager, however, disagreed. He said he was certain the young gentleman would come to understand his intentions one day. The patriarch confessed that it might be better for the boy to remain unaware of the truth. Perhaps it would be easier if the young man resented him. And yet, something about the boy's words lingered in his mind. The patriarch then asked the manager if the young man was the cause behind the strange phenomenon. The manager answered that perhaps he was beginning to awaken, to tap into his fighting prowess. He added that he had felt the same way when Gon was still very young. Two geniuses had been born into the Baek family. The patriarch, however, rejected the idea. Even if the manager's words were true, they would only encourage others to name Gon the heir apparent. But the patriarch didn't want that. He wanted the child to live freely, unburdened by expectations. The manager apologized, admitting he shouldn't have said such things. The patriarch then said the matter couldn't be left unresolved. He ordered the manager to dispatch the Red Dragon unit immediately. At that same time, in the Ruby training room, Chong brought something up. He said Gon was starting to believe that his father was neglecting him on purpose, to justify selecting the second son as the official heir. Gon admitted that Chong was right. Chong scoffed, calling him weak, and claimed the Baek Clan's patriarch was being manipulated by the elders. Gon responded that it was only possible because of him. Martial artists who achieved immortality lived abnormally long lives, and many of the Baek family's elders were still alive. Defying them would not be easy. Chan commented that the ancient sages had taught reverence for elders for a reason. Gon, however, noted that the old man was avoiding the question. Frustrated, Gon stood up and declared he was ready. Chong then shifted the topic, asking how one could use internal energy when qi was separated from the bloodstream. He explained it was actually easier than it seemed. Gon just needed to die, not literally, but to approach it differently. Chong asked if he understood the essence of qi channel blockage. Gon answered that it was a rare condition where the meridians that qi flowed through were blocked. Zhang interrupted, saying he was wrong. Qi flowed inside all living things. If Gon truly had no qi flowing through him, he would have already died. Qi was like an ox and the meridians were like a riverbed. When the channels were blocked, the river turned into a shallow brook. Gon argued that as long as he survived, there was still hope. He could still learn martial arts if he could find a way to expand his channels. Zhang admitted that it would be glorious but sadly impossible. He had seen many people die and never once could he physically see the meridians. Blood, bone, and flesh were all visible, but neither soul nor God resided in the body. However, once Chong became omnipresent, he became the bridge between qi channels. He explained that God was directly tied to the will and the inner energy core. Through his willpower, he had tricked both his body and qi. In short, body and mind became one. And once the mind connected to the will, it changed, evolving into a godlike force. Gon was confused by this explanation and asked Chong to summarize it in one sentence. Chong replied that the key was labor. Through tireless effort, one could use sheer willpower to reopen blocked Qi channels. But it wouldn't be another lecture about hard work. This understanding came first in Chang's home dimension and now, again, here. Chong added that Gon hadn't yet learned the Baek Clan's mind technique, the Flaming Sun. He asked about the Taiyin meridian. Gon explained that he had trained himself to survive. The Baek Clan's secret immortal martial arts were deeply rooted in both the Flaming Sun technique and the Taiyin meridian. The former allowed quick energy gathering, while the latter was necessary to purify the mind. Chong asked if the Taiyin meridian was the foundation for mastering the Flaming Sun technique. Gon affirmed it and said that most completed their Taiyin meridian training by the age of 7, then began practicing the Flaming Sun technique. Gon added that he hadn't completed it back then, but now that he had, perhaps it would finally become useful. Excited, Gon asked if that was really true. He had no idea the Taiyin meridian had been incomplete. Chong confirmed this. Though he couldn't cure the blockage himself, he could teach Gon something. After all, if the sacred immortal blade had acknowledged it, then it truly might be possible. Gon could even learn martial arts. Gon began to rejoice and begged Chong to train him. 6 hours later, drenched in sweat and worn out from exhaustion, Gon was still pushing forward. Chong noted that while his morale was lacking, his tenacity was remarkable. He told Gon to start over because the real purpose of the Taiyin meridian was to project the will into physical reality. He said that in time, Gon would understand everything, the moment he managed to touch his own soul. Chong instructed him to put all his will into his fist. He observed that Gon was a fast learner. In 3 years, he would catch up. In 10, he would surpass him. The more he learned about the boy, the more he liked him. Just the thought of training him filled him with joy. Yet the reality the boy sought was unattainable, unless he first died, then resurrected, and overcame adversity time after time. In that moment, when Gon spoke, he found himself recalling the final moments of his past life. He hadn't forgotten what he felt back then. The confusion, the pain, the determination. Now, through training and perseverance, the awakening was drawing near. He vowed to take that very moment, hold it in his fist, and through sheer will, transform it into success. Then, just as Gon reached the edge of his limit, Zhang said he was about to release his spirit. Moments later, the boy lost consciousness.